Giving honor to God at this hour, and certainly to Minister Amy and the ministerial staff here at Riverside, to our friend and social and religious prophet of our time, Reverend James Forbes. There's not a minister that I know held in higher regard with more respect than Reverend James Forbes, who I'm honored came today to introduce my being here. And I don't think we ought to take men of his commitment for granted. Give a big hand to Reverend James Forbes. I'm proud to be joined by many from Nash Action Network, including my daughter, Dominique, and companion, Aisha, and others. But I must acknowledge the presence of our Congressman, the Dean of the House of Representatives, Congressman Rangel. And one of the profound thinkers of our times, I call him the Socrates of our time, Reverend Dr. Michael Eric Dyson is with us. And I can go on and on, Michael Hardy, my attorney, others that are here. The other evening, I was in Washington and went to Nevada for an appearance, and I began working in my mind on the plane for today's message. I was told that Riverside is celebrating today the theme, God is Here. And as I thought about it, I said, let me address the theme of today in my message. When I landed in Nevada, I got a call from the head of Staten Island chapter of Nash Action Network, Cynthia Davis, telling me about Eric and how he had been choked by a New York City policeman and proclaimed dead at a hospital. My mind went back 20 years ago, where I went to the same Staten Island, same precinct. Young man named Ernest Sayon had been killed by a policeman in an altercation very similar. The march that weekend was led by myself and others. The march yesterday, led by myself and others. 20 years ago, the mayor's name was Giuliani. The commissioner's name was Bratton. 20 years later, the mayor's name is de Blasio. The commissioner's name is Bratton. There's a lot different 20 years later. Yet, we will see if a lot remains the same. One thing that is different is there's a video this time. And as America watched this video, aside from the legalities and aside from the parliamentary procedures that police due process calls for, aside from the fact that the mayor reached out to the family, whereas 20 years ago the mayor did not, aside from the fact that there's a different tone, What bothers me is that the nation watches a man saying, "I can't breathe." And the choking continues. "I can't breathe," and it continues. "I can't breathe," and police surround him. And none of them even say, "Wait a minute, stop, he can't breathe." Even if police procedure doesn't kick in, when does your sense of humanity kick in? When does our consideration of human beings kick in? Have we gotten so cold and withdrawn and inflexible to even people fighting for their breath does not appeal to something inside of us? And does the faith community this morning, churches all over the city of New York gather, do we deal with this moment with impeccable laryngitis by not even addressing what children in the streets see? God is here. Well, maybe the reason people doubt it is those of us that claim to represent God show up missing in action. But there's two sides to this. Because not only do we need to see Bratton do things 20 years differently. Last week in New Jersey, man ambushed a policeman, and his loved one said he should have killed more cops. That is just as wrong. And just as Bratton must deal with police choking, the Sharptons must deal with those that want to take cops out. Both sides are wrong. We cannot have a society where people are on polar opposites, defending police being killed on one side and defending chokeholds by police on another. 21st century, and we're still having these arguments. We come to church this morning while in Malaysia they're hiding evidence on how almost 300 people died that had nothing to do with what they are debating about. No one on that plane had anything to do with Ukraine, Russia, European nations, or the United States. But we have, just like Staten Island, become so detached to people are collateral damage to our political views. Yet the faith community has not raised its voice. The faith community has not said, let's go and see where this happened, why this happened, and appeal to all sides. There was a time that whatever happened in the world, we had men and women of faith, the Martin Kings, the William Sloane Coffins, the Sister Campbells, that would lead the way to setting a moral tone. Israel and Gaza, there would have been those delegations there raising their voices. Today, 17,000 people, water cut off in Detroit because they didn't pay the water bill on time. Seniors can't take their medicine. Mothers can't boil water for their babies, can't even flush a toilet. In Detroit, Michigan, not in the Middle East, not in Africa, in Detroit, down the block from where GM and Ford are recording their profits. They're cutting off water while major corporations are delinquent in their water bills and they can turn on the faucet all day long. Where are the voices of faith? God is here. Well, where are the representatives of God? Chicago, one weekend, 82 shootings. Next weekend, 38. Gun violence everywhere. We are comparing notes like we're in some Olympic competition of murder, seeing which city has the worst gun violence. Yet the people of faith have not challenged gun manufacturers, have not challenged a Congress that will not even pass have not challenged a Congress that will not even pass background checks. Can you imagine members of Congress that want photo ID to vote, but no background checks to buy a gun? Something strange about that. We're leaving National Action Network this week, going for our 2014 Freedom Summer, where 23 states have changed voting laws. Not because there's fraud. The Justice Department under Bush said there was 0.0003% fraud. There's no fraud. But they want to change so we can now have government photo ID to vote, cut down on early voting days, stop Sunday, go to the polls. Why? Well, it's a solution looking for a problem. Why? Because the forces that want to limit people, the forces that want to stay in power know if they make it more difficult for people to vote that had been denied the vote, that they can stay in power. And we're going to make sure that that doesn't happen, because do not forget, voting was not donated to us. People died to get us the right to vote. Black and white. And they came from the north to the south. And some came back in coffins: Goodman, Cheney, Schwerner, Viola Luisa. The problem is that not only do we not have enough of us that will come with the moral imperative to go to the South today, there are not enough of us in the North dealing with the bigotry and bias in the North. Dr. Forbes, in his introduction of me, talked about some of the controversies and rejection I faced, but some of it was because had I marched and agitated and did the things that I did in the South, the Northern liberals would have loved me. But how dare I challenge your image that we were able to so carefully build, that all was well here when it was not. So rather than deal with the message you mess with the messengers. But the message will outrun the myths. We've got to deal with these issues. Whether it's police misconduct, whether it's income inequality. We've got to deal with how on this island, Manhattan, one side, Wall Street is booming, and the other side, Washington Heights and Harlem, is starving. Same island. Yet we take our Bibles on Sunday morning and we get our favorite hymns ready and we sing to a God beyond the sky. But I come to tell you, God is not up there, he's down here. God is not removed, he's present. You can deal with the existential questions of God, but also deal with his practical application. I've come to believe the reason that people love God beyond the sky is because the further removed he is from us, the less accountable we are to him. If he's up there, maybe he didn't notice one or two things we did. If he's up there, maybe we can slip and slide a few things. But if he's right down here, he knows what we did and what we didn't do. Oh, all of us have sinned. Some of our sins public, some private. Many things I've done been publicized. Some stuff wasn't publicized. Then some stuff was publicized that I never did. Doesn't matter. But you and I know that there is a difference if we believe that God is right here and will hold you accountable. Just like we love history, not as instructive, but we leave it there. So it is great to talk about the leaders of yesterday, but what about right now? Yes, it's with great pride that I stand in this historic pulpit, but I owe those that stood before me to stand and deal with the challenges of today. It is the height of hypocrisy to stand in this historic pulpit where Dr. King took on the war in Vietnam, and for me not to talk about Eric Garner, and not to talk about voting rights. It is hypocritical to hide behind the cloak of your deity, of your religious formalities, rather than the application of what religion ought to be about. God is here, but are you here with God? And if you are, how is that demonstrated in your life? What have you done to enhance social fairness, social justice, and equality? What can you say to God that his investment of life and heartbeats and breaths has returned to him? Do you think that you glorify God by getting a promotion on your job? That you glorify God by the assets in your bank account or your portfolio? That's good for you. But God gave you life so you could bless other lives. I often say the hardest job of a minister, the most difficult task, and it is true, I've been preaching since I was a kid, and I can say with some authority that the most difficult task of a minister is to preach the funeral of an irrelevant person. That's a hard job. They roll the body down the center aisle. They lay it before the altar. Choir gets up and sing great numbers. And then we supposed to get up and hallucinate a life for you you never lived. I mean, most folks shouldn't even have a funeral. Most folks should go right from the morgue to their cemetery place. Because there's really not much you could say. Oh, they did all right for themselves, but who cares? The house you bought will be on sale by the end of the week. The car you drove will ride up and down the West Side Highway. We'll change the title sooner or later. The only thing that will matter 2 minutes after you're gone is what you did for more than yourself. Think about this. Think about if today is your last day. If this is your last service, what can they say about me? And if you're not satisfied with your own answer, you should leave here today working on yourself and building on what you need to build. Because God is here, He's available to you if you but use what He's giving you to be more than self-indulgent. Now, I know many of us come with reasons we won't step out. But I come to tell you that's why God is here. God takes the ones that are the least likely and gets the most done. As I have seen in my life, people that were the unexpected and rejected are the ones that end up the greatest. So don't let whatever mistakes or whatever things that may be in your past hold you back. God is not trapped in your past. God is there for your future. And He's there that every day you wake up was a divine decision He made to give you another opportunity to serve. You know, I travel a lot. Asians, sometimes my daughters and staff members, Rachel Norling is here, who quit me to went on the higher pastures of City Hall. One of my joys in life is I can march on her. She used to march with me. They would tell you I fly, travel a lot. Reverend Forbes, I'll go early in the morning, late at night, good weather, bad weather. The only time I won't get on the plane is if they tell me it's the pilot's first trip. They stand and argue and say, Reverend, we've checked, he's passed what he's supposed to pass. He has his pilot's license, he's been certified, and I get all of that. But just the thought that this first time he's in charge of the radar. And he never figured out clouds before. I don't want to be up there with him. Or the first time he was in charge of the powers when we go through turbulence. What am I saying? A lot of people, Dr. Dyson, they only want friends that are clean and pristine and no smears, no questions, never had a bad day, never had their credibility questioned. I don't hang out with folk like that. Because if you have never been through anything, I'm not sure if you could get through something. I like to hang out with folk that been knocked down, that's been talked about and scandalized and dragged through the mud and muddied up, and somehow God picked them up and cleaned them off and stood them up, and despite all odds made a way for them. If you've never been through trials and tribulations, you're just guessing what God can do. But if you've been through the fire, if you've been through the flood, if you've been through what people felt you'd never make it through, if you conquered your own anxieties and your own insecurities and somehow God made a way for you, you can worship him today, not because of what you heard, but because of what you know. I know that God is here because I look at the wave of history, and even with the difficulties, I see how God's hand is moving us forward. I know God is here because when Dr. King came in this pulpit in '67 to come out against a wall, no one in that time would have ever thought that we would be sitting here today with a black president and a black attorney general. Ken Sunshine, I know God is here. Because in 1969, an activist disrupted the services at Riverside, talking about reparations. The president was Nixon. In 2014, the morning preacher is an activist named Sharpton. The president is Obama. I know God is here. I sat on the fourth row on the platform and watched as President Obama was being inaugurated for the second time last January. And I will never forget, they brought out 2 Bibles. There were a senator about 2 rows behind me said, "Al, isn't this an awesome moment?" I said, "Yes." He says, "And he's going to be sworn in for the second term." Put his hand on Lincoln's Bible and Dr. King's Bible. Isn't this breathtaking? I said, "Yes, it is, but don't be confused. Those are 2 Bibles, same amount of books, same amount of verses, same amount of chapters. But those 2 Bibles took different roads and different routes to get here. Lincoln's Bible was on the mantelpiece in the White House. Heads of states and captains of industries and leaders of the military looked at that Bible. But Dr. King's Bible came a different route. It came through the backwoods of Mississippi, the bayous of Louisiana, the jailhouse houses of Birmingham, if you open up the front cover, there's a cell number in Dr. King's Bible. From when he went to jail in Birmingham, and they took his Bible as property and checked it in for him to take it when he got out. Little did the bailiff know, when he was writing the cell numbers in King's Bible, that same Bible would be on the steps of the Capitol swearing in the President of the United States. I know God is here. I'm reminded in closing, there was a high school in South Carolina. They used to have a singing contest every year at the end of the school semester. They would give a song, and the student that gave the best rendition would win the contest. There was a lot of tension because for 3 years, this same young lady won. Nobody could beat her in the school or even the surrounding community. They gathered in the auditorium that night and took the volunteers, and it was this same young lady, and only 2 people would challenge her. When they got them on the platform and set the mic out for them to step forward one at a time, they said, the song this year that you must sing is the Lord's Prayer. First contestant went forward, did the best she could, stepped back. Then a young man stepped forward, did the best he could. They applauded, he stepped back. Then the champion came forward and she sang the Lord's Prayer. And when she got finished, whole audience stood up and applauded. It appeared that she had again won for the 4th consecutive year. The judges were just exasperated. They said, well, wait a minute, does anybody want to try? We're open to the community. And to their surprise, a little lady raised her hand, and she walked up on the platform, and people started smiling and grinning and clapping because it was the music teacher, the one that taught that young lady how to sing. And she got up on the platform, and she held her head to the side the same way the young lady did, and held her shoulders back, and she sang the Lord's Prayer. And when she finished, the same audience got up and gave a longer, stronger ovation to the music teacher. And it appeared after a 3-year streak, she'd been defeated by her own teacher. The judges, almost as a formality, said, well, does anybody else want to try? And as they got ready to quickly close the contest, a voice rang out from the back, said, wait a minute, let me try. And when they looked around, a man started walking down the aisle, had a pail and a broom in his hand. He put down the pail, he put down the broom. The students recognized him. He was the school janitor. He stepped up on the stage, still with dirty overalls on, tilted his head to the right, and he sang the Lord's Prayer. When he finished, nobody clapped. Nobody stood up. But as they looked around the auditorium, there was tears streaming down everyone's cheeks. And when the vote came in, the janitor won the contest. As he took his trophy and walked out to greet all of those that were there to congratulate him, a young man ran over from the school newspaper and said, Mr. Janitor, I need to interview you. Explain your victory. You never been to a music class. You never had voice training. You never even been in a contest. how do you explain winning against the best student singer and the music teacher? He looked at him and said, it's very simple, son. They know the words to the Lord's Prayer, but I know the Lord they singing about. I came to Riverside today to tell you I don't know all that others have come and said. I don't master homiletics. I don't have a doctorate in theology, but I know the God that they were studying. He walks with me. He talks with me. He tells me I am his own. I know the God that they're studying.